All right, I want to welcome everyone to our 27th episode of our Homesteading series. Our topic tonight is community and youth gardening. This episode is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel tomorrow or the next day. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about West Virginia Department of Agriculture's business development services that we offer. And then our first guest is Hannah Hedrick, who is from Grow Ohio Valley. She is their education program manager. Then we'll talk with James Russell from the West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition, and he is a food shed coordinator. And we'll take questions in between each presentation. The first thing I'd like to quickly talk about is our West Virginia Grown program. This is a free membership marketing program supported by the Department of Agriculture. It's been around since 1986, and a few years ago we rebranded the program, and you can check out our new logo down there at the bottom. Being a member of this program offers you many services, like being in our print West Virginia Grown catalog. It gets you in our monthly market bulletin and a searchable database on the West Virginia Department of Ag's website. Once you become a member, you can use the West Virginia Grown logo on your products, packaging, advertisements, and websites, and more. So if you have any questions about West Virginia Grown, we'd be happy to tell you more about the program. Everyone could mute if possible. Veterans and Heroes to Agriculture is our program that supports veterans and heroes through mentorship, scholarships, training, and education. We have an upcoming 8-week program on herbalism, from soil health to human health. They offer some amazing scholarship reimbursement programs, mentoring, and the head of this program is Dane, and he would be happy to talk to anyone who would like some more information. And they also work with the Homegrown by Heroes logo, which is another great marketing tool for producers. And then finally, we have our planning coordinators. My name is Kacey. I'm a planning coordinator, and I cover the northern region. We have Nathan in the east, Ashley in the southeast, and Lacey in the southwest. But if you're in that dark blue area in the middle, don't worry. The 4 of us kind of share that area depending on our expertise. We can help you with everything from production planning, navigating rules and regulations, marketing, and other services. We'd be happy to talk to you about your farm business or community garden or anything else you'd like to talk about regarding agriculture. And I want to quickly put a plug in for our 28th episode, which will air on May 18th at 6 p.m. And that topic will be planting field crops. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Hannah.
All right. Hey, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Okay. If you can see that okay and hear me, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, Kacey. Excited to be here to talk a little bit about gardening with kids. I know the topic for tonight is it's community gardening and children's gardening. Most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is going to be pretty heavily focused on kids, since that's what I deal with the most. But a lot of these things can even apply to community garden situations, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So as Kacey said, my name's Hannah. I am the education program coordinator at Grow Ohio Valley. Grow Ohio Valley, we're an agriculture nonprofit based up in the Northern Panhandle in Wheeling. Our mission is we want to build a food system in which farmers flourish, and local and healthy food is a way of life for everyone. And we kind of approach that work with 3 different areas of work. There are a lot of different things that we do, but most of our programs fall into 3 main areas, which are farming. So we have several working farms that we use to produce food in the Ohio Valley. 4 of the sites are urban sites, So they're within the city of Wheeling, and that would include up in the corner this high tunnel. There's a site where we have a couple of high tunnels that we produce in all year round. We have an urban apple orchard, as well as a little greenhouse you can see down in the left-hand corner where we grow some microgreens, and then a little plot under an overpass in downtown Wheeling that is used for just various vegetable production. And then up in the top right corner, you can see a shot of our more rural farm site. This is kind of our newest venture. This is our biggest site and the one that's farthest out into the country. So we're doing a little bit of livestock and vegetable production there as well. So those are our farms, and the farms are, the purpose of them is to fill the gaps in local producers in the Ohio Valley. We're a nonprofit, so we're not necessarily trying to get rich off of farming. Haha, that's a joke. But we want to fill the gaps where there are not people producing certain crops that there are demand for. Our second kind of area of work is our food hub. So we aggregate produce from various producers in the region and then sell them to a few different outlets. So we have a CSA, which, if you're not familiar, stands for Community Supported Agriculture. It's basically a subscription that we give to local produce. You buy in at the beginning of the season, and every week you get to pick up a box of produce from our farms and other local producers. So we have that as a sales outlet. And we also have a grocery store called the Public Market, sort of a year-round indoor consignment farmers market model, which is kind of a mouthful. But that store is designed to be an outlet where local farmers can sell their products. And then our third kind of area of work that we do is community education. And we have a lot of different education programs. A lot of them are focused on kids. So we work a lot with schools in our area. We have kids up at our farms for various programs. And during most of those programs, we work with kids either in gardens in their schools or on our farms. So we have quite a bit of experience working with kids in a garden setting. Which brings me to the question. So you want to work with kids. You want to do gardening with kids. It's really awesome. We love to do it. And generally, the kids really love it too. So if you're thinking about starting a garden at a school or with a youth group or other group of kids you know, or even just with your own kids, it's really worthwhile. And there are a few best practices and tips that we can share with you tonight. So why would you start gardening with kids? There are so many reasons, way more than I could fit onto one slide, but just a few are the fact that growing vegetables, it encourages healthy eating and environmental stewardship. You're working with the land, you come to understand it a little bit more. Gardening develops a sense of ownership and responsibility in kids, having to see through a crop full to maturity. It's an opportunity to connect multiple concepts, such as science, art, agriculture, and technology. And that's really key, especially in a school setting where you're trying to hit a lot of educational standards. You can hit a lot of those at one time if you're doing programming in the garden. There are health benefits to being outside in the sun and the microbes in the dirt, and it's really fun. Generally, kids don't get a ton of time outside at school. Obviously, every kid's different, but this is a great way to open up the world of the outdoors and gardening to kids, and they typically have a lot of fun doing it. Okay, that sounds great. So how do we do it? There's a few different phases of when you're considering starting a garden. We're going to go through from the very beginning all the way to the very end. So you can jump in wherever the status of your project is. But before you even start to think about building your garden, you need to assemble your team. It is really important to know who will be taking care of your garden before you even start to build it. Because a lot of times I've seen it happen in many gardens that there's a group that's really excited, they think a garden is a great idea, but they don't necessarily have somebody in mind who is going to be the one who is watering and weeding and picking all the produce when it becomes ripe. And for that reason, a lot of gardens by the end of the season are just weed patches. So you want to make sure that you know who is going to be responsible for your garden before you even build it. And a consideration for school gardens is that a lot of the growing season happens during summer break. So you want to consider that when you're thinking about doing gardening in school. It can definitely be done, and there is a good chunk of growing season before school lets out and after it comes back in, but you're gonna need to think about who is gonna be tending it over the break, whether that's parents or a garden club or a teacher, as long as somebody's doing it. So when you're planning your garden, I think one of the most important things that you can do is incorporate the kids into the planning. If you know your group who's going to be working in the garden, and you should if you're going to build a garden, let them help you plan. They're more likely to be engaged if they see their ideas being put into practice. So you can ask them questions. You can do several planning sessions, ask them how they want the space to look and feel, ask them what they want to grow. A lot of times they'll say like bananas or cake, but so you definitely can't do everything, but try to accommodate it within reason, because they'll be more likely to eat the produce if it's something that they want to eat. Another thing to consider when you're planning is you want to build a space that's really engaging to kids. And a good way to do that is to utilize all of the senses when you're thinking about what you're going to plant. So you can incorporate taste by planting the veggies and herbs that you're going to eat. Think about touch. You can plant stuff with fuzzy leaves like lamb's ear or crunchy straw flowers to just kind of explore different textures. You can do herbs that smell really good. Sound by encouraging pollinators or doing a little water element. And then you can try to have some bright colored flowers or unusually colored vegetables just to make it a little bit interesting. You can also consider perennials when you're doing a kid's garden. This is something obviously for any gardener to consider. When you plant perennials, they'll come back every year. So you can save yourself some time planting and also try to cultivate that special space that kids remember and they'll want to come back to year after year. Our kids, they love this berry patch. This is at our farm under the overpass, and they just, as soon as they come there, they make a beeline to the berry patch because obviously it's the most delicious thing that we have there on the farm. But it's really fun to have that for them. So when you're gardening with kids, you really can incorporate them in all steps of the growing process. That way it's really clear how a food gets to be from a seed all the way to their plate. You can see we have this group seeding. A lot of times when you're having a kid do a farm task, you're going to have to go back and check their work afterward and maybe fill in some of the gaps that they leave, but it can be worth it for them to get to see all of the different steps of the process. And even if they're not very good at it to start, they can learn how if you keep doing it over the years. Then we have some tools that we use with our groups in the garden. Just a couple of things that we found useful. So when we have groups that are coming on a regular basis to spend time on the farm or in our garden, we encourage them to keep garden journals. And that can be just a notebook that they are going to have with them during their time in the garden that they can use to write down their observations or do a drawing of something they think is interesting. And that really seems to help keep them engaged in what they're looking at and what they're doing, and also give them something to do if they get a little bit distracted or bored. Having kind of like an alternate thing for kids to do if they get distracted by the many stimulating things in a garden can be really useful. They can channel that into the garden journal. You can also introduce the idea that not everything that you plant is going to make it to maturity. You're not going to be able to save every plant, but this can be a really useful exercise in observation. You can be like a detective to try to find out what factors are causing your plant to be sick. So you can talk about pests and disease and poor soil, and kind of temper the expectation that every single thing is going to be perfect every time, because if you've ever gardened before, you know that it's not. And then sometimes we do scavenger hunts. Especially if there's not too much work to do in the garden that day, you can send them around to look for different things. This was one time we had a group at our farm and we did a weed scavenger hunt. So it gave them a chance to look for different plants that a lot of times are considered weeds, but are also very valid plants. And then just a quick word on physical tools that we like to use in our garden. After doing this for several years, just knowing that gloves that fit kids' hands will go a really long way in making them feel comfortable digging in the dirt, and like really improve the quality of their work. So it's really hard when you don't have the dexterity because your gloves are huge, or you don't feel comfortable sticking your hands in the dirt because you don't have gloves at all. So kid-sized gloves are great. A sturdy molded trowel. It's really tough to break and hopefully won't be able to break skin. So we use these ones. They're all plastic, all in one piece, and they last forever. And then for harvesting, instead of really sharp knives, you can use scissors or a serrated lettuce knife. Those are kind of the really important things in our toolkit when we do gardening with a group of kids. So then after you grow the food, you work really hard to take care of it all summer. You obviously want to eat it as well. And it is so true that if kids have the opportunity to grow it and cook it, they're going to be way more likely to want to eat it. So we do a lot of snacking in the field, and then sometimes we'll be able to take stuff back and prepare it somewhere else. But some of the biggest hits, these are some of our greatest hits, I would say. So making homemade jam with berries. There's an activity you can do where you shake up butter in a mason jar. So jam and butter with berries is great. The most surprising hit among all the kids I've ever worked with is kale chips. They just eat kale chips like crazy. Didn't really expect that, but they love it. You can do a salad in the field with lettuce, tomato sandwiches if they are not inclined to eat them straight off the vine. And then they also typically really enjoy quick pickles with cucumbers. And just a couple of miscellaneous tips and a familiar face for Kacey from a long time ago. Just a couple of things I've learned over my time working with kids in gardens. Do the pollinator lesson early to get kids comfortable with bees, and you might avoid a lot of freakouts. It's really amazing how much more comfortable kids tend to be with bees when they know that they are not going to sting them because they don't want to. Also be prepared for the conversation to get derailed by a cool bug every 10 minutes. There's nothing wrong with that. The bugs are really cool, but they're very distracting. If there are a lot of things to get done, stations are your best friend. This can be good to keep kids' attention for a shorter amount of time. A lot of times if there's one long task to do, kids will lose their attention and start to wander around. So you can implement multiple stations and get them moving around a little bit. You probably want to let go of having straight lines in your beds unless you do a lot of prep work of marking out spaces where you want your plants to go ahead of time. But that's okay. Even if it's not a straight line, it's still going to taste pretty good. And then finally, give directions first and then tools. Once you put a tool in a kid's hand, they're not going to listen to you anymore. And that's all I've got for now. If anybody has any questions, I think it's time for them.
Hannah, that was wonderful. That was so many good tips. If you want to unmute and ask a question, that's fine. Or you could put your question in the chat box. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to James? And thank you, Hannah. And we'll ask for questions again at the end if you think of some as the evening goes on.
See if I can figure out how to stop sharing.
There you go. You're off sharing. Do we have any questions from anyone? No? Okay, then I'm going to ask one. What do you use any formal kind of lessons that go along with garden planting? And do you have any suggestions for people that are looking for maybe educational materials on how to teach lessons along with the planting?
Yeah, there are a ton of resources out there related to planting and gardening with kids. Some that we have used in the past, I can send Kacey links to these if anybody really wants them, but the Whole Kids Foundation has a great packet of lessons that go along with planting. And the Big Green Foundation as well has some good ones. And then we've also just started using Food Corps. Food Corps has a great website. There's tons of lessons you can download and look at on their website, and cooking tips and lots of really good stuff. Food Corps.
Great. We can add some of those links under the YouTube posting too, so people could go directly to those. I wrote them down. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, James, were you able to pull up your PowerPoint?
I did not. I could not find it. But with that being said, following what she talked about, which was wonderful, I think I'm going to switch direction because I was going to do with the kids that we do. I think I'm going to go to the next age group. And let's discuss what I do with the high school kids.
That would be great, James. If you want to turn your camera for people to see you, since we don't have a PowerPoint, but if not, let's roll with that. Okay, so I think I've got my, yeah, there it is. I'm not a tech person, so when I'm looking at the screen and it's in a little tiny bubble that I can't. Okay, so anyway,
My name is James Russell. I work with the West Virginia Food and Farm Coalition, and the counties, as Kacey said, I'm a food shed coordinator, and the counties I work in is Mingo, Wyoming, McDowell, and Mercer counties. And there has been just a huge shortage in those counties of any kind of fresh production. Nobody grows a garden anymore. And that is one of the things that we've been working on. And Dana Lester and Jenny Totten started a program, McDowell County Youth Producers, and it started at Mount View High School. It's middle school and high school. And what they do is they have a huge high tunnel, and they recruited some kids to come in and just grow a few things. That was the whole thing about getting the youth back out there, getting interested in, growing a garden. So along with some of the teachers, they started growing in the high tunnel, and the kids absolutely fell in love with it. So as they started growing and the kids were producing, it was kind of funny. They would come out like every, once a week, and then every third week they'd come out and they'd say, "Oh, we got cucumbers to pick." Well, they'd all pick them and just eat them right there, and which is a wonderful thing to see the kids that, a lot of kids in those counties, especially up, in the southern coal fields, we're in so many food deserts that the kids don't see a lot of fresh produce. So they were very, very impressed. And it began that those kids started really working hard, and everybody, bunches of kids would volunteer to come and work in the high tunnel. So Dana and Jenny at that point started the McDowell County Youth Producers, which those kids actually work in the high tunnel. And what they do is they produce now, they do wonderful stuff. And one of the things is to watch those kids grow stuff they've never seen before. So they grow, like last year they did a atomic tomato. It's a cherry tomato, and it's got these atomic flare colors, and they're so beautiful, and they super sweet. They grew a lot of the chocolate cherries, and they sold those to farmers markets and to local restaurants. And the kids realized that, hey, we can take that money and now we're going to turn around and expand our garden. So not only now are those kids growing in that high tunnel, they're growing outside in a row and hoe garden, just like, we grew up doing. They're also growing out there. Now they're doing another side where they're going to do container garden, straw bale gardening, and they're using this as the teachers are coming out and using it with their science classes, and they work with us now, because I'm there, and we're working together with the teachers that they can use their curriculum in school also in the gardens. And yeah, Hannah was right. The issue does come down about what do you do when you have kids off in the summertime, and you need water, you need to weed the high tunnel, you need the sides up or the sides, it's just a lot of work that happens in the summertime. So this year, the McDowell County Youth Producers were able to hire one of the students to actually pay them some, that they could come in and keep everything going as the summer grew on. And it just keeps going and going. So we've got a high tunnel at Mount View. Sandy River has a full-fledged heated greenhouse, cement floors, that we work with those kids, and they do a lot of starts. They do a lot of carrots. They do the rainbow carrot. I don't know what it is that those kids got going on, but man, they do rainbow carrots. That's unreal. And then Sandy Valley, I think the middle school there in War is getting a brand new high tunnel. They are actually bringing the water and electric in now as we speak, and we're waiting on the high tunnel to be delivered. It was ordered and already paid for. That was part with, can't remember, the USDA and the school board, and it's turned into a huge conglomerate, I guess, of just youth producers there in McDowell County at these schools. And these kids are working very hard. And it's so fun to see. And I know people don't like to talk about it, but I work a lot with beginning farmers as well as kids and, in farming. When you want to change a culture, people my age, it's a waste of time to change my culture because I'm old. I ain't going to be around much longer. But when you change the culture of a child and you get that child thinking how important it is to be in that garden and how fun it is to be in that garden and what they can eat and like Anna was saying, the healthy eating and what it promotes, but it also exercise, right? It also gets these kids, when they're allowed to be out of the house and where they can get plenty of exercise and the work that they do, and then they get to see the reward of, hey, I can eat what I want to. Now, as far as the bugs go, we did a pop-up market that our kids grew, and we took to the older kids grew it, and we took it to an elementary school, and we gave the produce away. And one of the children were sitting there, and he come up to me, and I mean, he just opened his corn and started eating. And he came up and he said, "Mister, there's a worm in my corn." And I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what we can do. Give me that, and I'll just give you a brand new ear of corn, and you just give me the one with the worm in it." He's like, "No, sir, I'm keeping my worm." And I said, "Well, here, just take this piece of corn and you eat it and let the worm eat that piece of corn." And I mean, it's just amazing to see. And some of these kids, I'm not lying, some of the younger kids, when we first started going around to the elementary schools, they were like, "Where did this come from? Did you buy this at Walmart in Princeton, or did you go somewhere else?" And it's like, "No, we grew this right here in McDowell County." And so it's really turned out, we have a thing now. This year, we're going to do peer learning, and some of our older kids that are in high school that are driving, they're going to go around to the elementary schools themselves, and they're going to teach in the high tunnels and the greenhouses. And we're just building that program to where these kids continue to teach these other kids, and they all learn how to grow in a community setting and know that no matter where they live at, you can still grow and you can still eat. And it's it's pretty amazing to see what kids can do and how much they want to learn about gardening and the questions they ask. And I'm telling you, there's times I have to do a lot of research because they ask me stuff that, okay, I'm not sure of. But, teaching these kids trellises and just things they can do. And they start already, with one of the meetings this spring and getting prepared for the season, some of the kids was like, "James, we need another high tunnel that goes this way. Our high tunnel goes this way. We need the L shape and go on up there. We've got so much more room that we could be growing more stuff." And these kids are just on it. They learn it, they study it. And now to see some of these kids going out and they do this at home. They grow their own gardens at home now. And I'm like, just so impressed that what these kids are doing and the work that, but it couldn't happen without the teachers, right? These teachers go out there with these kids and they teach them lessons, and that's, coordinated with the growing season, and they work their lesson plans in there, and they really work hard with these kids. And it's amazing to see what the kids are doing. This year, they'll get to see the high tunnel build, and some of the older kids will actually get to work on the high tunnel build. And turned into an entrepreneurship and just like before, it's, hey, what can you do with this? Well, okay, here's our pitch. We can grow cucumbers, and then we can make pickles, and then we can do this and this and this. And, we use it as an entrepreneurial teaching. We can teach the kids the entrepreneurialships, and we can teach, but for me, it's just the amazement that the kids see. I'm old. I grew up on a farm. I know, to me, sometimes I guess I lose the wow factor, but to see it in these kids' eyes, it's an amazing situation going on. And just with Hannah and what they got going on in Wheeling, it just makes me happy. As an old person, it makes me happy to see these kids working and to see all of these schools. We have several schools in Mingo, Wyoming, and Mercer County. I work a lot with the FFA and those kids working in high tunnels. They just did their Mother's Day flower baskets, and those kids did an amazing job. And it's tough to see what we're going through with the pandemic and what the kids are limited to, and then how hard they can come out and work and succeed through all the restrictions and all the things that's going on. They still seem to be dynamic enough and resilient enough that they go out there and get this stuff done, and they love it so much. And one of the young ladies that works with us, I think she's a sophomore. She was like, I never had no interest in doing this. I just done it because my sister done it. And, now, buddy, they can tell you straight up what they are really good. They can tell anybody how to grow in high tunnel, right? These kids are really doing a good job. And that's one of the things about working with kids and with youth and community gardens. If you're in the leadership role, or if you're in the, getting it together, the planning, step back and look at what these folks are doing. And then that brings that amazement back to you, and that wonder. We work with a group in Mingo County with a community garden, and they are set up at in front of a senior living facility. And the folks there that run the garden, they go out and help the seniors. They've got their own grow boxes, and the seniors come down and they help them grow. And then you just see the seniors, how happy they are that they're back out in the garden. They're out doing this work again. And if anybody out there, looking for something to do, get involved with kids in the garden, get involved with a program that does community garden. You can see a whole lot that goes on that just absolutely will astound you with what these folks are doing. And they're doing it all across West Virginia. And, I'm really happy to be a part of it. I'm not just one little tiny piece, and I'm working, but working with these kids is just amazing. So, Kacey?
Yeah. Thank you. That was very inspiring.
Okay.
Did you see we have some comments here? Kacey said teaching reinvestment in the business and the model being deployed to fill summer gap is just brilliant, and thank you for sharing. And I just wanted to say the skills that you're sharing with these kids, I mean, that's going to be with them forever. So I think that's great. And I love to hear your perspective on it. And Leslie said here that kids are truly our future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we have a question from Nathan. A lot of school programs across the state are just amazing. Do each of you, Hannah and James, have a thought on how we continue that movement of educating youth, helping to improve the next generation of food system development? Like, how can we get this even more widespread?
Yeah. Hannah, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. Man, that's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I think that the work that is starting in school is huge. One of the biggest things that we're hoping to accomplish here is like to actually get that culture or to get gardening and food and growing food to become part of the culture in our schools. Because it has been something that has been lost from a lot of schools. So like at this point, we are trying to get that reestablished as like just a general knowledge part of life at school. And I think that'll be huge in encouraging people of the future generation to pick up this skill as part of their life, is to just normalize it as part of their everyday. And until that happens, I think a really important thing is going to be just creating the opportunities for them to engage with it, right? Like, just like you're doing at your program, just like creating the opportunities, whether it's during school or after school, for kids to learn how to do this stuff, whether it's clubs or camps or whatever it is. Just a lot of it doesn't exist necessarily. So yeah, reestablishing it and making it really normal.
One of the things that we do, or I do, not everybody, I'm that old grumpy guy that just won't take no for an answer. So I beat the door down into schools. Schools that don't have anything, I'm always there, right? Hey guys, did you know you could do this, or you can do this, or these kids would be really interested in this. And if the principal is not really open to those ideals, what I do is find out who the science teacher is, and I say, hey, you know what would go really, really good with your program is if you grew some vegetables with your kids. And when you start talking about doing the lesson plan along with growing, you do get, there's some people that's receptive. But of course there's some that don't want to be a part of it. But that's how we're growing, right? Is we just keep going to these schools and say, hey. So finally, I went to Wyoming County just the other day, and I was like, hey, called the main office and said, hey, you all have a high tunnel. Is it in use? And the lady said, we actually got 3 in our county and none of them are. And I said, okay, get me in contact with your folks. I think next year they need to be in operation. And I was like, okay, who are you and what kind of programs can we run? And then we started that dialogue. And so now we're looking at next season, working with the 3 high tunnels in Wyoming County. And that's my whole thing. I know that I'm just 4 counties, but I don't care if there's a kid or there's a school or there's a community that wants something, even that's not in my food shed, I will go and do my part, do what I can do to help them. And that's where I'm at, right? There's other folks on the ground taking different approaches. My approach is to get to the kids and say, hey, let's teach these kids how to grow vegetables. And that's how we do it. Nathan is, trying to get, keep the ball rolling. We've got it started and it's really good in this one area. We just need to expand that area. We need to make the ball bigger.
That's great. It's amazing to hear that there are counties with 3 high tunnels and more. That just shows there are such differences between the counties throughout the state. Some have a lot more resources and a lot less. And kind of in our northern region here where Hannah and I are, we don't have FFA programs. So we don't have a lot of school involvement, especially at the high school level. We have some, school greenhouses, but there's just so much more that can be done each year. And it's really exciting to see little groups coming up. I see Carol and Ed are on here. If we want to talk about some great school garden work, they've been doing a lot of stuff. I saw you here and I wanted to give you a little shout out, guys, because I know how much work you're doing up there or down there for me. Is there anyone else that has any questions? I think tonight has been really inspiring, and I hope we can share this video with lots of people because I think this was some really great information. Any other questions? Quiet group. I just really want to tell you how much we appreciate you both taking your time this evening to talk to us. And we really appreciate all the good work you're doing for the communities and youth in West Virginia.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you. And everyone have a good evening. If we don't have any additional questions, and watch our Facebook and our website for this video being posted in a day or two. And thank you for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.